Hey guys, so we're not going to Graaff-Reinet, we're actually going to France. The picture behind me, I took in the grass, I think it was May sometime, come on, May 2019. I wish I was going there in spring rather than in autumn. Lots of floods happening there at the moment and not terribly getting cooler by the day, but I will be there probably this time next week, so it should be quite interesting. It's really good to see Stephanie. I was thinking of delaying this live by about half an hour, but I don't want to get into the habit of doing it. Helena, good to see you. And Pauline, good to see you as well. So I'm going to try and get through 6 letters today, and then we should just about be chronologic. excuse me, chronologically level with where we need to be in real time. Not obviously. How many years ago is it? 145. Is it 145 years ago? Somewhere around there. What, 135 maybe. 24 plus 9. 133, around 133 years ago. But we're certainly going through it at the same pace and will be level in terms of that. Okay, so I think you guys know what I'm getting at. Okay, so without any further ado, let's jump in. We are in September 1989. It's a letter. I don't know why they said to his parents, because his father had died at this point. Actually been dead, I think, several years at least 5 years. I'm not sure exactly what the date was. I did know once upon a time. Anyway, so it's actually a letter to his mother, and you get the feeling that what Van Gogh is trying to do. Hey, Rookie, good to see you. You get the feeling what Van Gogh is trying to do is it's almost like it's a political campaign. It's almost like he's trying to drum up support for the idea or for the notion that he is now ready to leave the asylum, and he wants to go to Paris. He wants to be based closer to Paris. So, in order to do that, he's written this letter to his mother, and on the same day, sorry, that letter to his sister, and basically communicating the same thing. And so that the sort of, he knows that the family are going to sort of gather behind closed doors, so to speak, and basically discuss what is best for him. And so this is his way of kind of having a say in that. But I think it's a real effort, it's a real campaign to get that conversation, to get that sort of show on the road. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's jump in. Dear mother, to begin with, I want to congratulate you, though late, upon your birthday. This, I think, shows a little bit of Van Gogh's, that he can be a bit of a manipulative fellow, just in the sense that he is writing to his mother not to wish her happy birthday, but more because he's thinking about himself. I don't think he gets along terribly well with his mother. He gets along well with his brother, but I think he's writing to her not really because he's thinking about her birthday, but he's thinking about his circumstances, that he needs her to get on his side in terms of that. Yeah, Stephanie's put the link to this particular letter on there. I think it's actually 606. Yeah, that's right. Well, 606. So it's this letter. Robbie Robin, I know you reading Van Gogh letters. What did I say in there? When did Van Gogh's father die? I could look it up, but I just want to test your knowledge, see if you can let us know. I've got a feeling it was something like 1885. Anyway, let's I'll monitor chat and see whether we can get an answer. Anyway, he says, twice already I started a letter which I put away again as my head did not feel like writing. So he's tried to write to his mother. He hasn't really been in the zone, and now is making, I guess, his third attempt. He says, how much I agree with you in seeking other surroundings after Cora's departure for some time. There was much news in your latest letters. Firstly, particulars of Cora's departure. So Cora is the youngest of the Van Gogh brothers, and he is left to go to South Africa. He's going to work as a railway engineer, and at this time, gold has been discovered in South Africa, and there's like a, what do they call it? Gold rush. And so the government are also racing to provide infrastructure so that the gold can be mined and then loaded on trains and then taken to harbors and then shipped out the country to be, is it manufactured? The raw materials manufactured somewhere else. Okay. It says, so that's already planting the seed. I agree with you in seeking other surroundings. So it's basically saying Cora is seeking other surroundings. You are seeking other surroundings. Guess what? I also want to seek other surroundings. Of course, the situation is a little bit different with him. He says there was much news in your latest letters. First, the particulars of Cora's departure, and further that you are going to move in November. I can understand that you prefer to be nearer your grandchildren, yet it will be a strange feeling to think that none of us stayed in Brabant. I intend to send you a picture shortly and one to Will too. I'm working on them and will surely have them ready by the end of the month. But it may still be a fortnight before they're dry enough to be sent off. These last weeks I've been, as far as my health is concerned, quite well. And I'm working from morning till evening almost without interruption, day after day. And I lock myself up in the studio to have no distraction. You kind of have the idea he's trying to get well. He's basically in a kind of self-imposed solitary confinement. He's trying to get well. He's trying not to be triggered in any way, but he is working. He is busy. Thus, it is a great consolation for me that the work is progressing. So he feels comforted, consoled, encouraged by the fact that his feeling about his own art is that it's improving. And that is, you can imagine how that is something to be encouraged about if you are worried about your mental health, but you can see that the quality of your work is sharpening. Well, then maybe your concerns are misplaced, right? Okay, so he says, instead of, he says, I do it, I paint, I'm working with absolute calmness, and that in this respect, my thoughts are quite clear and conscious. I think this is also a way of saying, I'm normal, I'm calm, I'm healthy. And so, based on that, take seriously what I'm about to say next, right? So he says also, and so compared with others here who cannot do anything, I certainly have no reason to complain. It's basically saying I'm very different to the other people in this madhouse. And then he gets to the point. He says, recently I wrote Theo that I should like to be less far away from Paris for a while, and probably something will come of this. Not that I'm willing to yield my freedom for the sake of being less trouble to others when it becomes too bad, but for the moment, it comes to about the same thing. Now, I think one of the reasons why it's taken him three tries, this third try, is he's trying to get the letter just right. It feels like he's got to choose his words very carefully in terms of what he wants for himself and how he hopes to convince his mother that what he's doing, what he wants, is the right course of action. Then he says, and there are so many among the artists who, notwithstanding nervous diseases or epileptic fits from time to time. It's interesting that he mentions that. That's not what he's got. But basically, he's conflating whatever he has with other artists, which is, I'm not sure if it's completely reasonable, because I think it was quite different. He says, nevertheless, go ahead. And in a painter's life, it seems to be enough to make paintings, but also one has to be careful not to spoil one's connections with other painters. My health during, and think about how that has happened with Gauguin. By the way, we are going to talk briefly about the ear incident via this really amazing article from the Berkeley Library. Thanks very much to you know who. I'm not sure if you're watching, but for sending this through. So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion on two of the points a little bit later in this episode. So try and stick around for that. Okay, so he then says, let's go back to that. He says, I believe it will still take years before I'm quite incapable. What he means by that is it's going to take some time before I'm totally useless, I guess, which I feared in the beginning would be the case immediately. So a little bit of a change of tune here, right? He says, also, my stomach is so much better than before. And he says, my health during the intervals is so good. So he's giving himself quite a, good, clean bill of health there. He's basically saying, I'm ready to leave. I can be discharged. I'm giving myself a positive diagnosis. Oh, so I was right about the 1885. Thanks a lot for that, Robbie Robin. Thank you. Stephanie says, I feel for him because while some of his symptoms may be within his control, some are not. Absolutely right. That's right. And then good to see you, Yvonne. It's always good to have you with us. I think you guys know that Yvonne is a actual artist among us. And Iceland's husband is also. Okay, let's continue. However, I fear I shall again find out in the course of time that not every procrastination is a thief of time when one has to do with illness. Well, so I've found that, that when you ill, you shouldn't really work. You should try and not work so obsessively. And it's interesting, he is very eloquent the way he expresses this. Not every procrastination is a thief of time, especially when one has to do with illness. I would also say, I'm about to go to the south of France and to Italy. I would also say not every procrastination when you've worked long and hard is a thief of time, because should you just work, I think you should also explore, you should also live a little, right? So I would say, it's not just when you're ill that you should, I don't necessarily say procrastinate, but not necessarily be working. But also when you are, I think one needs to sharpen the saw and have a little bit of downtime. And that's okay. It's sometimes difficult if you're a workaholic, and certainly if you've gotten into a pattern that has sort of worked, to abandon it. But it is necessary to, in the same way that the seasons change, one's also got to allow yourself to renew via a little bit of a change of scenery and, psychological season. Okay. There we go. Lisa Stokes, good to see you. It's also fascinating that a week after his father died, that's what he was preoccupied with at the time of his father's death. Okay. So then he goes on to say, but there seems to be no rule for it, and the physician repeated to me several times that one cannot say anything about it beforehand. But if one knows that it is a chronic disease, you will understand that one, though absolutely perplexed in the beginning, gets used to the thought, and then considers what one can still do. And this might be even more than one expects. I must say, very intelligently expressed. And it is quite interesting how he seems to acknowledge that he has a chronic disease, that he does have something, some kind of serious infection. He seems to be aware of that. Okay. In the beginning, I was so dejected that I had no desire even to see my friends again and to work. And now the desire for these two things is stirring. So now he's saying, I'm kind of having a change of heart. I want to see my friends again and I want to work. And he says, and then there's the fact that one's appetite and health are perfect during the intervals. So he's really kind of laying it on a little bit thick that I'm really doing well. I'm really feeling healthy. My appetite is back. My health is back. And he's kind of repeating it. And then now he starts to sow another seed. I don't think it's unkind to say, or even unfair to say, he's a little manipulative in this letter. You can tell that he is trying to say what he wants in a very careful way. And maybe that is often how it is when you're an adult with parents who hold sway over your life. You do need to pick your words carefully. Anyway, he says, I'm so longing for Theo and his wife. And I think that's true. But he's not saying it right in the beginning. He's first laying the foundation. Then he says, whom I haven't even seen yet, and I'm interested in everything. And when I think that this is no time for me to look for new friends, I think that much more of my present and former friends. So it's almost like he's saying, you know what, I want to be with the people I know and love, and the people who know me and love me. I can't help looking at those words, and because the experts, the experts in art history and in this story will tell you the first time when Van Gogh cut his ear off, what motivated that was the despair that Theo was going to get married and then he wasn't going to look after him. That's their reason why he cut off his ear. Then they say basically a year and a half later, the reason he took his own life was exactly the same thing. The despair, now that Theo had had a child, that Theo wasn't going to be able to look after him. And if you ask me, it's incredibly pathetic reasoning based on really not understanding the story at all. To be fair, I think there's a little bit of substance to both of. There's a little bit of truth to both of those notions. I think he was aware of what is going on. There may have been some concern, and I think some of that concern was actually true because you can actually see now he's in the asylum. He's in a very compromised state, and his brother's not quite as available or there for him as he was in the past. His brother's got to deal with a pregnancy, his wife that's not always healthy, financial concerns with his wife, and he's got to work and everything else. So I think there's some validity to it. But to say that that's the sole reason why the incident happened, and then also it's the reason why here he's saying, I'm longing to see Theo and his wife. No, he's not saying I'm longing to see Theo, right? And later on, when the little baby's born, he would say, it was so nice seeing baby Vincent, and it was, you know, I showed him around all the animals in the farmyard. You don't really get a sense that he didn't like Joe, or Joe didn't like him, or he resented Joe, or nowhere does he say in his letters to Theo, wow, what about me? I think there was a concern there, but at the same time, Theo totally reassured him, right? So, in any event, I think there's a much stronger narrative, there's a much stronger motive for other things being at issue and things that were much more under Vincent's control and part of his psychology. in terms of his relationships with other women, in terms of his relationships with substances, in terms of his the way that people misunderstood him and all the rest. Let's just have a look at some of your comments. Look at Joe's devotion. Lisa says, you need to live by yourself when you're sick and love yourself. Okay, so let's continue. So he says, stop snoring. He says, yet I understand that I must not ponder this too deeply, as it may have to be settled quite differently than I sometimes imagine. Well, he's right about that, because it's going to take, if you think about it, it's only September. It's only September. He's only been, I almost said in prison, he's only been in the asylum since June. So it's June, July, August. Barely been there 3 months. Is going to spend triple that length of time in the asylum before he comes out. He's basically going to be in a kind of a prison for a year. He's coming out in sort of mid-May, right? He went in close to May, June. He comes out around May the next year. And you can imagine he just doesn't want to miss summer. When he comes out, spring is coming. He really wants to get out. Now it's approaching winter, and he's starting to think, do I really want to be here? He says, only I am anything but patient when I'm not feeling well, though I have a rather solid stock of patience for my work, but that is literally all. As often as I have the chance, I work at portraits, which I myself sometimes think are better and more serious than the rest of my work. And if it might happen that my condition allows me to go back to Paris, it's about the third or fourth time that he's repeating this, or its vicinity. That will probably be the important thing for me. So he's putting this on the family's agenda. He's told his brother, he's told his sister, now he's telling his mother. And now I say goodbye for you today. Forgive my not writing before. And I hope to send you the paintings I'm making for you shortly. Embracing you in thought, your loving Vincent. Okay. So we've got to get through 6 letters. That's the first one. So 5 more. So 9 days later, Vincent writes to his brother a little bit over a week. And he's ordering paints and probably canvases, and he's also reporting back on what he's done. What's also interesting is how short the letter is to his mother. I think that tells you 2 things. I think on the one hand, he probably feels like he doesn't want to overstay his welcome. She has certain certain memories about him, certain thoughts about him. Remember, their relationship prompted him to say, wow, they treat me like a shaggy dog who's so loud, his bark is so loud. And so he's aware that they don't have the best relationship. So he doesn't want to write such a long letter that she stops reading it. So you kind of get a sense that was a calculated aspect as well. And now this letter to his brother is much longer, and he can kind of be himself a bit more, right? So this is what he says. By the way, let's have a look at Green Wheat Field. I don't know why it says 1890, because it's 1889 at this point, but see if we can see the original. Green Wheat Field, Van Gogh. I really don't like the by the way, I know someone who's ordered this print for their home. This isn't actually the one who's ordered this print for their home. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? Is it going to load? There we go. It is a perfect picture just to add color to a room, right? color and a little bit of texture. That's not really the one that I was looking for. Wonder if it's this one. I don't think it's that one. Must be one of these. It's not that one. It's not that. I think we're coming up to it. Is it this one? And that's got the right date. Green wheat field, June 1889. So he's been painting these fields in different seasons, different colors, yellow, after storms, after reaping, and all that sort of thing. I don't know if you can see the reap over there. Is that at night? Yeah. Stop snoring. Okay. That pretty much seems to be the view outside this window with these mountains over there. I cycled over those mountains from all is on the other side. And there's the same scene in a rainstorm. Wheat field with cypresses, there are the mountains in the background again. Similar sort of angle there, the mountains again, similar sort of angle. And now he's nostalgic and he's added a windmill. So it's the same sort of scene, but he's pretending that he's back home. What would this look like if I was somewhere else? Again, you keep seeing the mountains receding in the background. I really like this particular picture. That was done in November 1889. You can see how it's improving. And then that's something else. I think that was painted from Orvez. That you can see the date 1890. Okay, we're not going to Orvez just yet. Okay, so let's get going with this letter. My dear Theo, I'm writing to you another letter to explain that there are 3 studies missing in the package of canvases you already have, because the postage for the roll with these taken out was 3 francs 50 less. So I will send them at the next opportunity, or rather, they are leaving today with other canvases. So he's sending wheat fields and so these seem to be the pictures. Study of cypresses. I think, Stephanie, haven't we seen this actual painting in real life? I think we have. Hey, stop snoring. Olives and ivy. Then also the 3 above mentioned poppies, night effect. That he calls this painting, he calls Starry Night night effect. So he hasn't yet sent Starry Night to Theo, and we really want to know what Theo thinks of Starry Night. What do you think he thinks of it? And then also Moonrise. That's that one. Soon I shall send you some small canvases with the 4 or 5 studies that I want to give Mother and our sister. These studies are drying now. Those size 10 and 12 canvases, small copies of the wheat field and the cypresses, olives, the reaper, and the bedroom, and a little self-portrait. Kind of looks like a Van Gogh we don't even know, just a completely different character. He kind of looks a lot younger, doesn't he? Anyway, then he says, that will give them a good start. And I think that it will give you, as well as me, some pleasure to arrange for our sister to have a little collection of pictures. I'm doing copies on a reduced scale of the best canvases for them. And I would also like them to have the red and green vineyards, the pink chestnut trees, and the night effect you exhibited. So this really important question, sorry, this very important painting, who's it going to belong to at the end of the day? Bear in mind, it's going to be worth millions one day. Who's going to get it? Also interesting, he red and green vineyards. I think. Oh, that's not the one. He is about to sell his first picture. It's called. I think it's called the Red Vineyard. He says, "You will see that I'm gaining a little in patience, and that perseverance will be one result of my illness." They're kind of saying some good is coming out of this. I am learning to persevere. Feels like he's been pretty resilient anyway. Then he says, I feel freer from many preoccupations. Someday you must send me, when it is convenient, the Red Vineyard. This is the one that one painting he sold in his life. And I think whoever bought it does have pretty good taste. I don't particularly like the coloring in this. This is not really what it originally looked like. Let's see if we can get that. I think it's worth it. Let's have a look. So that's a bit more like it. Also, just really about color, reds and greens and yellow, but quite a balanced picture. And I can vouch for this long row of trees, this long avenue that really is there. That really is there, just outside All. Okay. I must say, when I go there, I wonder whether the Red Vineyard will be red, because when I was there, I think there was just soil. They'd harvested whatever they'd planted, so it was just soil. So there's nothing to photograph. So at least going there now, it'll be kind of a similar time of year to, I think, when it was painted, fall. Then he says, now as for the Reaper, first I thought that the large size duplicate that I'm sending you was not bad, but afterward, when the days of mistral and rain came, I preferred the canvas done from nature, which seemed rather strange to me. Timmy, I'm going to put you down because I need to have a drink here. So I'm just going to have a quick drink of some, still drinking bottled water. Literally. He says, but no, when the weather is cold and sad, it is precisely that which makes me recall that furnace of summer of the white hot wheat. So it is not so exaggerated after all. Old Peyron has come back, that's the doctor, and talked to me about having seen you and said that doubtless your letter would give me all the details of the conversation which he had with you, and that in any case the result was that it would be wise to stay on here for a while. So, despite his campaign with his sister, despite getting his hopes up, despite his efforts, the bottom line is you should stay where you are. And that's what happened. He says, which, being my own opinion too, goes without saying. Nevertheless, if an attack returns, I persist in wishing to try a change of climate and returning to the north, even as a last resort. So he's saying, yeah, no, I accept that. But then Yeri says, I might prefer something else. Monsieur Peyron said that you looked well, which pleased me. I've received 10 tubes of white, but I need another dozen of zinc white as soon as possible. So 2 large tubes cobalt, I think that's blue, 1 emerald, 1 chrome. Is chrome silver, or is it, I think, yeah. 1 small tube carmine, I think that's a reddish color. He says, for there are lovely autumn effects to do. I feel quite normal now and do not remember the bad days at all. With the work and very regular food, this will probably last a pretty long time, notwithstanding, meaning the normalness will last a long time. The good health will last a long time. I think he's being a little optimistic because it's not going to be that the winter's not going to be a picnic for Van Gogh. It never is. Anyway, he says, I shall go on working like this unless the thing appears. For at the end of the month, you will receive another dozen studies. Am I mistaken? Your letter seems to me to be very late this time. It's a very diplomatic way of saying, I noticed it took quite long to write to me. What's going on, right? Unfortunately, there are no vineyards here, but for that, I should have done nothing else this autumn. There are plenty, but it would be necessary to go and stay in another village to do them. On the other hand, the olive trees are very characteristic, and I'm struggling to catch them. I think that's another way of saying I'm struggling to capture them, right? A little bit of a mistranslation, I would say. They are old silver, sometimes with more blue in them, sometimes greenish, bronzed, fading white above a soil which is yellow, pink, violet tinted, or orange to dull red ochre. Imagine every day looking at trees and appreciating the different depths of green and silver and blue and just the little touches of color that you see in trees. When I walk with Timmy, there are trees in a sort of a what do they call it? A wild estate, I guess. And some of the branches are almost like a bright red color. It actually is pretty picturesque. Anyway, then he says, very difficult though, very difficult. But that suits me and induces me to work wholly in gold or silver. And perhaps one day I shall do a personal impression of them, like what the sunflowers were for the yellows, if I had some of them last autumn. But this half liberty often prevents me from doing what I nevertheless feel I could. Patience, however, will tell me, and it is really necessary. Give Joe many kind regards and keep well and write soon, please. A handshake from ever yours, Vincent. Okay, so we're almost halfway through our 6 letters. This wasn't a very long letter compared to some of them, but he does say something that's quite unusual. You seem to be taking a while to write to me. So how long passes? It's about a week before Theo responds. 4th October 1889, my dear Vincent. I've really waited too long to tell you that your last consignment arrived in good order. Now I think this consignment contains Starry Night. I like the wheat field and the mountains enormously. They are very beautiful in design. In the wheat field, there is that unshakable something which nature has, even in her fiercest aspects. The orchard, too, is extremely fine. Isaacson, who has been writing for a Dutch paper recently, wants to write something about your work. That's quite a compliment, right? Seems like he wants to maybe review it or comment on it. He asked me to let him have certain pictures to keep at his home for a while, including the mountains and the wheat field. Well, has he received Starry Night yet? Maybe not. As soon as I send you the reproduction of the Malays, I shall include articles by Isaacson. I don't particularly like his search for new works, but as a matter of fact, he says good things, which the majority of the art critics do not. Your letter gave me a good deal of pleasure, and I thank you very much for it. I can well understand that in moments of great excitement, the attendance of the good sisters, that's basically the nurses who work in the asylum, hardly has a tranquilizing influence upon you. Can you see how the Van Goghs have a sneaky or a sly way of saying something unkind? Sometimes, there's a sort of a slight twist in terms of their humor. So where he says, I can well understand that the attendance of the good sisters hardly has a tranquilizing influence upon you. It's kind of not a very nice thing to say, but he says it in a kind of a sly way, right? Now, I don't think Isaacson ever did write anything. There was another guy who wrote the review. Can't quite remember his name. Robbie Robin, who wrote the review in the end. I must say, my plant that has come back to life is looking really good. I could actually bring it here and show you if you like, but it's probably as long as my arm. It's as tall as my arm already, which is not bad. It's definitely come along. Okay, so let's continue. So he says, Dr. Peyron came to see me and he seems to be well disposed toward you. So this is quite important. The doctor who's been treating Vincent, who's been witnessing everything. So now you can't hide behind letters and cleverly chosen words. Now this is it. This is where the rubber meets the road kind of thing. This is where the cookie crumbles. What does the doctor say? And he says, Theo says, I like his face very much. He says that for the present, you're absolutely healthy. So that seems like Van Gogh is being authentic on that, honest on that. And he says, if it weren't for the fact that it is such a short time since you had that crisis, he would already have encouraged you to leave the establishment more often. He told me that seeing that your trip to All provoked a crisis. This is important. He's saying, my concern is the last time your brother went to All, it created a problem, so he needs to stay where he is. And one wonders, what did he do when he was in All? Did he drink? Did he rebel rouse? Did he rebel rouse? Did he go to a brothel? It is necessary to ascertain before you go to live elsewhere whether you can bear a change. If you can stand these tests, he sees no objection to your leaving them. Then he says, moreover, I spoke to Pissarro and discussed the question. I do not think he has any great authority in his own home. That's kind of quite funny. Where his wife wears the pants. After a few days, he told me that it was not possible in his own house, but that he knows somebody in Auvers. So this is how long it is. This is how early the idea had already taken root that he would go not only to Auvers, but that Dr. Gachet would sort of, in a way, be his guardian or certainly have a kind of custody over him. Let's look at footnote number 1. It says, Vincent's letter 609. But this is undoubtedly a reference to Auvers, Suarez, and Dr. Gachet. Pissarro knows someone in Auvers who is a doctor and does painting in his spare moments. That's him. He tells me the gentleman in question has been in contact with all the Impressionists. Definitely him. He thinks that you might possibly stay with him. Definitely not, but you could stay near him. He has to look him up and we'll speak about the matter. If you could find something in that neighborhood, it would be a very good thing for you. For I think Brittany also has something of the character of a cloister, which is even to be felt in the last Gauguins, I believe. That's quite an interesting point. It does feel a bit like a cloister in Gauguin's work. Bernard is coming tomorrow to look at your pictures, and I shall go to his house to see what he has brought with him. Now, just that comment prompts Van Gogh to write to Bernard. I feel glad in general that you're doing better now. If your change of residence should take you first to Paris, it would give me a great deal of pleasure. We have good things from Vil and Mother. Joe to his well and gives you kind regards. A cordial handshake. Yours, Theo. There's something else I meant to mention. The area of Auvers, there's so many well-known artists that emerged out of that fabric. Cézanne, who is one of my favorite artists. Monet, I think Manet as well, Pissarro, Dubigny, and the list goes on. I know when I went to Orvez, I was really torn. I really wanted to go to the garden that Monet painted. Trying to think what that area is called. I know it starts with a G. What's it called again? Giverny. Yeah. So that's one place I still want to go to at some point. Yeah, I would love to go to the gardens that Monet painted. Maybe when I'm over the whole Van Gogh thing, as in not over it, but once it's concluded, maybe I'll have a bit more time to do that. Um, uh, let's just have a look at what Stephanie says. He was the first critic in the Netherlands to write about Vincent van Gogh. Oh, did he? Did he write something? Okay. Because I know the other guy wrote about him. I don't think he really liked it. Let me just see if I can find it. Because it wasn't Isaacson, it was someone else. Anyone know who I'm talking about? How am I going to search for this? 1890. Albert Aurea. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I'm looking for. That's the review that I'm familiar with. Albert Aurea published his enthusiastic essay on Van Gogh, on which Vincent's fame as an artist is based, as well as Aurea's as a leading art critic. Okay. Yeah, so I actually didn't know that there was a. I don't know if that was it a fully blown review, or just some commentary on his art, maybe in line with, I don't know. Just see what some of you say. Yeah, I was going to. Yeah, even had the book cover sorted out. Um, well, now you've got your answer. So 9 months before the time, Van Gogh has already got a little foot in the door, and you can imagine that now that you've thrown him a bone, he's not going to let it go, and he didn't, right? But it just shows you it's the same thing in a way that happened with Gauguin. Van Gogh kind of starts to, you could even say fantasize, but just starts to daydream and starts to build this up in his mind. Bear in mind, he's a very lonely guy. And so long before he meets anyone, he's already done it in his mind in a way. And so that creates a lot of room for disappointment, for unmet expectations, for mutual discord, I guess, possibly. Okay, anyway, let's go back to the letter. So I think we've done 3 letters now. We've got 3 to go. So this is from Vincent to Theo. Thankfully, it's also not too long. So he writes, "My dear Theo," wow, you can actually see the autumn colors coming through here, right? The mulberry tree. I've actually got a mulberry tree growing right outside my balcony on this side. And then some more autumn colors here. Poplars. I think I've seen that one before. Anyway, he writes, "My dear Theo, I was longing for your letter, and so I was very glad to get it and to see from it that you are well, also Joe and the friends you speak of. I have to ask you to send the white that I had ordered as soon as possible, and to add 5 or 10 meters of canvas at your discretion." Well, it's quite a lot. Now I must begin with some rather irritating news as I see it. It is that there have been some expenses during my stay here which I thought Monsieur Peyron had notified you of as they occurred, which he told me the other day he had not done. So that it has mounted up to about 125 francs, deducting from it the 10 that you sent by money order. It is for paints, canvas frames, and stretchers. My journey to Arles the other day. So he spent some money when he was in Arles, presumably on paints and canvas, a linen suit, and various repairs. Wow, it's quite a lot. I use two colors here, white lead and ordinary blue, but in rather large quantities. And the canvas is for when I want to work on unprepared and stronger canvas. Unfortunately, this comes just at the time when I would gladly have repeated my journey to Arles. Seems like he's kind of saying, I need to get out of here, I need to go to Arles. Monsieur Peyron is like, we need him not to go to Arles. That said, I tell you that we are having some superb autumn days and that I'm taking advantage of them. I don't know if you guys know, right now in central and southern France, there are huge floods, worst floods in 40 years. That's happening right now. So we'll see whether the weather will have cleared in about a week's time. Maybe we should do a Team Peachtree trip. Whoever wants to go to Monet, and maybe you can go to Orvez as well. We pick a time that would be suitable, and then we go as a small group, maybe 5 or 6 of us. That might be quite fun, just for a week or 10 days. What do you guys think? Okay, we could even combine that with, then we go to the Van Gogh Museum in the Netherlands, not that far away. I mean, the north of France and the Netherlands is not it's a 2 or 3 hour train trip. So something to think about. Chelsea, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Where's Iceland? Okay, so it says, I have some studies, among others, a mulberry tree, all yellow and stony ground, outlined against the blue of the sky. I will have received the package of canvases that I sent you last Saturday. It surprises me very much that Monsieur Isaacson wants to write an article on my studies. I should be glad to persuade him to wait. His article will lose absolutely nothing by it. I think he's basically saying, hold on, don't write anything about me now. I'm improving. I can do much better. And with it, yet another year of work, I could, I hope, put before him some more characteristic things. It's quite humble, right? Saying, don't write about me now, I can do much better. With more decisive drawing and more expert knowledge with regard to the provincial south. It was very kind of Monsieur Peyron to speak of my affairs in those terms. I've not dared to ask to leave to go to Arles lately, which I very much want to do, thinking that he would disapprove. Well, guess what? He will. Not, however, that I suspected that he believed in any connection between my previous journey and the attack which closely followed it. Guess what? He does see a connection, and I don't think he's wrong. The thing is that there are some people there whom I felt and again feel the need for seeing. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that. What did Chelsea do that's so amazing? Wow, well done. Chelsea ran a 5K. Very good. Nice going. Very good, very good. I want to challenge all of you guys here to try and do the same thing, whether you end up walking 5Ks or if you end up running it. I did a 5K run walk in a triathlon the other day. I thought of sharing some of the photos of it, but on Team Peachtree, I haven't quite gotten around to doing it. I'm going to speak to my graphic designer about recovering that footage, but I did actually take some photos. Maybe that'll encourage you guys. Chelsea, very well done. Stephanie, you next. Can you run 5Ks? You next. I'm sure you run on the treadmill, right? Robbie Robin, thanks so much for that. Thanks. Okay, let's continue. So yeah, when he says this, what do you think he's talking about? Stephanie says on it. Okay. I'm going to try and do some runs when I'm in France and Italy as well. So I'm also on it. Who do you think he's talking about when he says the thing is that there are some people there, meaning in all, um, whom I felt and again feel the need for seeing? Who do you think he's talking about? Thanks a lot. I'll check it out, Chelsea. So we are going to touch on this whole notion of, did Van Gogh have kind of a girlfriend? Did Van Gogh have, some person that he liked in all that we sort of don't know about? And we're going to deal with that a little bit later. But I mean, we know that he was friends with the postman. We know that he knew a couple of people there as well. But it's hard not to think about that part. Then he says, not having, like the good Prévost, a mistress in the Midi, that gives you even more of a sense of what he's thinking about, right? Who holds me captive. I can't help getting attached to people and things. You can't help thinking that he is thinking in a certain area, right? And now that I'm staying on here provisionally, and as far as I can see, shall stay the winter till spring, shan't I stay here too till the summer? That will depend mostly on my health. And then, what you say of Orvez is nevertheless a very pleasant prospect. And either sooner or later, I'm pretty sure he actually wanted to kick this letter off talking about this, but he's left it until pretty much halfway. He says, without looking further, we mustn't look at anything else. This is what we need to do. We must fix on that. If I come north, even supposing that there were no room at this doctor's house, which guess what, there isn't, it is probable that after your recommendation in Old Pizarro's, he would find me bored either with a family or quite simply at an inn. That's exactly what happens. You can see Van Gogh is desperate to leave. Who wouldn't be? They provided him with a little thread, a little opportunity. He's pulling on it, and he's going to pull on it until he's there. And you can't blame him, but that is what's on the cards already. The main thing is to know the doctor so that in case of an attack, I do not fall into the hands of the police and get carried off to an asylum by force. And I find this such a interesting comment because it's so true and in a way so portentous. He says, the main thing is to know the doctor. And you kind of get the feeling he didn't know the doctor and they didn't know the doctor that well. They didn't know the doctor well enough. And he did actually fall into the hands of the police. The police did come to his bedside and things did get really crazy. So it's really an interesting comment that he makes here. Basically, he's saying we need to choose the right person. I don't think they did, actually. It was fortuitous that he was someone who was interested in art, but he was otherwise a bit of a rascal. And I assure you that the North will interest me like a new country. But anyway, for the moment, there's absolutely no hurry. I reproach myself for being so behindhand in my correspondence. I would like to write to Isaacson, Gauguin, and Bernard, but writing does not always succeed, and besides, my work presses. Yes, I should like to tell Isaacson that he would do well to wait. This is a little bit inappropriate that he wants to engage, he wants to write directly to Isaacson and also tell him when to write his review. It's a little irregular, right? But he's so passionate about his work, he's so caught up in it, he feels like, please wait. There's nothing I've painted yet, and that's worth anything. Just allow me to get better, and I hope to attain hope to produce much better work. Just please give me a chance. He says there isn't anything worth mentioning about my work now, and guess what? Is already painted Starry Night and the Red Vineyard and a lot of, well, uh, a dozen or so other really nice pictures. When I'm back, it will form at best a sort of whole, impressions of Provence. But what could he say now when I still have to get the accent of the olives, the fig trees, the vines, the cypresses? So he's very aware of what he wants to do, and he feels like he's got the potential to execute, to improve what he's doing, right? Stephanie, I think you mean and not kind. He was definitely not very sympathetic at Van Gogh's bedside. Hardly even spoke to him. But Bizarre is definitely right. Then he says all the other characteristic things, the same as the Alps, which must be given more character. That's what he's trying to do in his pictures. He's trying to give them character, right? And this is a really good comment from Mel Stiller. Very good comment. He's not an egotist. He's just someone who's very intensely interested in. He's just an intense guy, I would say. Okay. Then he says, "How I should like to see what Gauguin and Bernard brought along. I have a study of two yellowing poplars against a background of mountains and a view of the park here. An autumn effect in which the drawing is a little more naive and more home felt." Okay. Let's see if we can get a better version of that. It's not quite that one. Okay, so if we go to this is a series, St. Paul Asylum Saint Remy. We just go through it like this. That's his actual room. Some cracks in the wall. Don't know why they've got this picture there. Quite a lot of lavender. Looks like it's not used anymore, right? Formerly the collection of Elizabeth Taylor. I've definitely never seen this picture before. That's quite nice. See the benches. I mean, I like, for example, with a picture like this, I quite like what he does, but he's so terrible at figures that it looks like the work of a child. He's really not good at executing figures. Anyway, let's see if we can find the picture we're looking for. I think is that it? Yeah, that's it. Notice how he's got blue in the stem here. The stems are blue. It's interesting how through his eyes, in a way, and through his heart and mind, he must be thinking about trees as how can you navigate the idea of mental malaise, mental health. Um, I mean, he's coming. It must still be echoing in his mind. You know, the I don't want to call them inmates, but the patients that are basically screaming and shouting. And so when he paints trees, isn't he painting in a way um, his own feelings of disturbia, restlessness, peace, calm, and its opposite? You know, being calm and stable versus being um, agitated and unstable. Look at the contrast here. This very sort of yellow, fiery tree here, and then this dark one beside it. It's almost like mood swings in trees, right? It's quite a nice picture. I think that's it. Okay. All right. Then he says, altogether, it is difficult to leave a country before you have done something to prove that you have felt and loved it. Quite a profound statement. If I return to the north, I propose to make a lot of Greek studies, you know, studies painted with white and blue and a little orange only, as if in the open air. I must draw and seek style. Yesterday I saw at the Almanas here a picture which impressed me. A provincial lady with a face full of intelligence and race. Um, in a red dress, a figure like those that Monticelli had in mind. It wasn't without great faults, but there was simplicity in it. And how sad it is to see how they've degenerated here, as we have from our people in Holland. I'm not sure what he means by that. They have degenerated here as we have from our people in Holland. I'm writing you in haste so as not to delay replying to your kind letter, hoping that you'll write again and without waiting long. I've seen very beautiful subjects for tomorrow in the mountains. Many kind regards to Joe and to the friends, especially thank old Pissarro when you have a chance for his information, which will certainly be useful. Shaking both your hands, believe me, ever yours, Vincent. So there's confirmation. Pissarro had talked to Theo about Dr. Gachet in Auvergne, a great art lover and art collector who might be willing to have Vincent live with him. Where are we now? Letter number 4, I think. I think we've got 2 left. So now he writes to Bernard, and you're going to see, you're going to intuit how he is a slightly different person to the person he is when he writes his brother. He's a little bit less inhibited. And remember, I said, wow, Theo just mentioning Bernard, that's going to lead to a letter, and here it is. He says, my dear friend Bernard, my brother wrote me the other day that you were going to see my pictures. So I know you are back, and I'm very pleased that you should have thought of going to see what I've done. On my part, I'm extremely eager to know what you have brought back from Ponthaven. I'm hardly in the right mind for writing a letter, but I feel an aching void because I'm no longer informed. So that's really how he is feeling. Remember, he is missing the World Fair as well. I don't know how he feels about that, but I would be pretty aware of it. Anyway, he says, I'm no longer informed at all what Gauguin, you, and others are doing. I think that also says a lot. But I must necessarily be patient. I have another dozen studies here, which will probably be more to your liking than this summer's, which my brother will have shown you. Among these studies, there's an entrance to a quarry, pale lilac rocks in reddish fields, as in certain Japanese drawings. You can tell that, he really doesn't have anyone to talk to in the asylum. And so this is someone he can talk to about colors and paints and concepts and ideas and scenes. And so this is the one that he's referring to. Let's see if we can get a better version of that. Quite interesting. Well, the original doesn't seem particularly. This one's not really much better. Anyway, so he says, in the design and the division of color into large planes, there's no little similarity to what you are doing at Ponthaven. So it's interesting how he thinks about it. He's thinking about large planes and design and division of color. It's almost like he's designing a patchwork for a quilt or a blanket, in a sense. He's not seeing necessarily rocks, he's seeing a patchwork of color. Then he says, I've been more master of myself in these last studies because my health has steadied. For instance, there's also a size steady canvas with plowed fields, broken lilac, and a background of mountains rising to the very height of the picture. So nothing but rough fields and rocks with a thistle and dried grass in a corner, and a little fellow violet and yellow. Oh, and a little fellow violet and yellow. There he is. I must say, this does look like an epic landscape. I mean, these mountains look like almost like the Himalaya. Not quite that high, but he does imbue this landscape with a sort of epic quality, doesn't he? Just wonder if it's worth looking at the original of this one. Oh, this is, if anything, even worse. Let's see if there's a better one. Maybe this one. There we go. Silent Murmur says Van Gogh never really fully separates the human beings from the elements for a reason. Is Stephanie leaving us? Okay, well, thanks for being here. Or are you leaving us? I can't quite tell. Oh, not leaving, okay. I really like what he did there. You can see he's trying to give it autumn tones, which are a lot more rustic, right? Especially there, that feels a bit like the Red Vineyard in a way. There's his Reaper. I mean, does he just not have enough paint? I mean, the guy's leg is virtually transparent. Look at that. This seems like he didn't put too much effort into it. Well, I do think that this is the best version of it that we're going to find. But can you see it, just how epic these mountains look? It looks like a really big, massive. Like I said, I've actually cycled down the other side of these. It was tough, but it's not quite as high as it looks here. Anyway, that's that. Then he says, "This will prove to you, I hope, that I have not gone soft yet. My God, it is a very bad sort of country here. Everything in it is difficult to do with regard to disentangling its inner character and avoiding making it a vaguely apprehended thing instead of the true soil of Provence. Now, in order to get this right, one must toil hard. I tell you, and then of course it becomes somewhat abstract. For the great thing is to give the sun and the blue sky their full force and brilliance, and the scorched and often melancholy fields their delicate aroma of thyme." How, I don't know, poetic, eh? You can sometimes have an incredible turn of phrase, and this is a good example of that. Let me read that again. "For the great thing is to give the sun and the blue sky their full force and brilliance, and the scorched and often melancholy fields their delicate aroma of thyme." The olive trees here, old man, would be the very thing for you. what a what a statement to make. I haven't had much of a chance to get them right this year, but I intend to return to the charge. They are silver against a soil of orange and violet hues, under the large white sun. Good Lord, I've seen things by certain painters, and by myself too, which did not do justice to the subject at all. In the first place, there's something of Corot in that silvery grey, and this especially no one has done yet, whereas several painters have got their apple trees, for instance, and their willows right. For the same reason, there are relatively few pictures representing vineyards, which nevertheless have such an ever changing beauty. So there is still plenty for me to work on here. You know, there's something I'm very sorry not to have seen at the exhibition. What if it means of the World Fair? It is a series of dwellings of all the peoples. I think either Garnier or Violet de Luc organized it. Now, look here, could you, since you have seen it, give me an idea and especially a colored sketch of the primitive Egyptian house? I think it is very simple, a plain cube on a terrace, but I should like to know its coloration too. So that is where his thoughts are, right? The exhibition and some of the things that are there. I read in an article that it was blue, red, and yellow. Did you pay attention to it? Please be sure to give me the information. You must not confuse it with Persian or Moroccan dwellings. There are said to be some that are nearly the same, but not the real thing. As for myself, however, the most admirable thing I know in the domain of architecture is a rural cottage with a moss covered thatched roof and a blackened chimney. So I'm very hard to please. I think he would really have enjoyed The Hobbit, don't you? If he likes moss covered thatched roof. He will definitely like Auvergne because Auvergne literally has that shingles covered in moss. It was originally a thatched roof when he got there, so that he would really like that. I saw a sketch of ancient Mexican dwellings in one of the illustrated papers. They too seem to be primitive and very beautiful. Ah, if only one knew the things of those times, and if only one could paint the people of those times who lived in the midst of them, it would be as beautiful as the work of Millet. I don't say in the matter of color, but with regard to character. So he is trying to imbue his paintings with character as something significant, something one has a firm faith in. Now, what about your military service? Are you going? I hope you will go see my canvases again when I send my autumn studies in November. And if possible, let me know what you have brought back from Brittany, for I attach great value to knowing which of your things you think best yourself. So I shall write again soon. I'm working on a large canvas of a ravine. It is quite the same motive as your study with the yellow tree, which I still have. Two bases of extremely solid rocks, between which there flows a rivulet, a third mountain blocking the ravine. I wonder if I can visit this spot when I'm there. I mean, I doubt whether he could get far when you know, he probably everywhere he went was probably walking distance. I can't really seem to find a better. That's pretty much what he was painting. Again, look at the patterns. Look at the patterns that we're talking about here. Although he's painting realities, he's also painting just textures and patterns. I'm not crazy about this, but it is, I guess, quite interesting from a textural perspective. So this is coming down here and through there. Um, Deborah, thank you very much. Deborah says, did you know scientists say starry night accurately captures the rules atmosphere turbulence in Earth's atmosphere? Yeah, we did touch on that in the last episode, maybe near the end of it. It really is quite interesting. Lamtoon, thanks for joining us. But thanks for letting us know about that, Deborah. Thanks a lot. Yvonne says, I agree with him on that. Vincent had a desire to view things in the past as well as things in his present. Okay, then he writes, such subjects certainly have a fine melancholy, but then it is fun to work in rather wild places where one has to dig one's easel in between the stones lest the wind should blow the whole caboodle over. A little bit of humor there. A handshake, sincerely yours, Vincent. And so that brings us to our last letter, and it's this one from the 8th of October. The next letter is the 21st of October, which is into the future, which is basically tomorrow. Okay, so from Vincent to Theo, my dear Theo, I've just brought back a canvas on which I've been working for some time, representing the same field again as in The Reaper. Now it is clods of earth in the background of a parched land, then the rocks of the Alpines, a bit of green blue sky with a little white and violet cloud. In the foreground, a thistle and some dry grass, a peasant dragging a truss of straw in the middle. It is again a harsh study, and instead of being almost entirely yellow, it makes a picture almost entirely violet. Broken violet and neutral tints. But I'm writing you because I think this will complement the Reaper and will make clearer what that is. For the Reaper looks as though it were done at random, and this will give it balance. As soon as it is dry, I shall send it along with a copy of The Bedroom. I earnestly beg you to show them together. If anyone sees the studies because of the contrast of the complementaries. I think he's talking about that color and then basically this color. And then here he's talking about that color, the violet, and then basically this color. Not sure if I would really want to display them side by side, but anyway. Then he says, then this week I've also done the entrance to a quarry, which is something like something Japanese. You remember there are Japanese drawings of rocks with grass growing on them here and there and little trees. Okay, now I want to just completely jump out of the letters and ask you, does this sound like the writing of a madman? Does he sound like he's just talking nonsense and gibberish, or is he reasoning about how he wishes to come out of the asylum? He also seems to understand what's going on with him. He seems to understand the nature of his affliction. He also understands that he needs to stay there long. He's not like going into a fit or losing his temper or threatening or just going crazy because they're saying, well, you really need to stay where you are for the time being. Does he seem crazy, right? Again, when I wrote the book, I felt like there are three areas that I want to address. Was he mad? Did he cut off his ear? And did he take his own life? And I thought that I've got the best chance with the first one. That I think his letters show that he's not mad, that he just had some episodes where he was sort of losing consciousness, right? But it wasn't that he was mad. And I think you can say the same about that singer who died in Brazil, who fell off the third floor. Who would say now that he was mad his entire life? Nobody. Who would say that he was mad at the time that he died? Probably also nobody. At best, someone might say he drank a lot and that caused him to behave erratically. Well, there you have it. I don't think it's that different to Van Gogh, that when he drank a lot, he behaved erratically. Also, when his health declines to such an extent, he also behaved erratically. And if you put the two together, if your physical health is deteriorated and you're drinking, you can imagine how you can have these serious episodes that are mixed in with being violently drunk, right? You can imagine the kind of behavior that could result out of that, right? But you follow what I'm getting at. Just because you don't understand what happened with his ear and you heard that he went to an asylum and you know the end result and his art looks quite intense, people think he was a mad artist. It's just not accurate. But people like that idea. People like the idea that he was able to just almost be on a high and he just produced art as a result of that. I don't think they really understand how much deliberate, real, present, real time, conscious concentration, effort of will, effort of mind went into this. And you get a real sense of that in his letters. His art isn't just a mindless rush. It's very well thought out, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's continue. Then he says, from time to time, there are moments when nature is superb. Autumn effects glorious in color. Green skies contrasting with foliage in yellows, oranges, greens, earth in all the violets, heat withered grass among which, however, the rains have given a last energy to certain plants, which again start putting forth little flowers of violet, pink, blue, yellow. It's almost like he's seeing all of this in his mind, right? Things that one is quite sad not to be able to reproduce. I've often been in situations where whether you're seeing a flower or a sunset or a vast landscape, and you've got your camera and you take a photo of it, and you can just see it can't capture the vastness of it, or it can't capture the contrast, Even with a camera, even with today's technology, it can't actually hold a candle to what nature sculpts and the flourishes of nature. Have you noticed that, Yvonne? Sometimes there are things in nature that you just cannot capture. And that's the real challenge to an artist. I mean, you would imagine an artist with enough time could do that. Anyway, he goes on to write, and skies, like our skies in the north, but the colors of the sunsets and sunrises are more varied and clearer, like in a Jules Dupré or a Ziem. I also have two views of the park and the asylum. I quite like that one, especially the trees. Just the way the trees do that. Quite like that. I tried to reconstruct the thing as it might have been, simplifying and accentuating the haughty, unchanging character of the pines and cedar clumps against the blue. Before I forget, I just want to put this on the record, as it were. The guy that runs the complex that I stay in, his lawn is made of plastic, and he's also the rest of his garden is paving. So his garden is basically plastic lawn and paving, right? And he's kind of in charge of this whole complex. And some time ago, I don't know when it was, maybe a year or two ago, after a series of events where he was cutting down trees, I confronted him. And I basically said, not stop cutting down trees. I just said, if you're going to continue doing this, just let me know so I can not supervise, but maybe I can provide some input, because he seems to keep making silly mistakes. Like he'll completely cut down a tree and say, "Oh no, I gave them instructions, and when I looked again, they cut the whole tree down. That wasn't what I asked for." But then one tree after another is being sawed down, right? And I've been informed that they want to cut down two of the trees that I planted in the first weeks that I moved in here. And by now, these are big trees, and they provide a lot of shade, and it's part of, in a way, I feel my home, right? He's decided that's, it's really important that he needs to deal with these trees, right? He says you can't have three trees next to each other. So I'm going to make a prediction. While I'm away, while I'm not in South Africa, when I come back, those trees are going to be gone. They're going to be cut down. I'm just making a prediction. We'll see if it comes true. When he first started this, he would say to me, so the first time I said, if you want to do something, will you please let me know? And then I think he said something like, he used Afrikaans is a verklein word, means a word that reduces the size. So if you say taki, tak means branch, taki means small branch. So you said, do you mind if we just snip a few little branches of that tree over there? So I said, no, that's fine. And the next thing, it sawed down like a branch that was as thick as my arm, and another one about as thick as my leg. So you can just see it's someone who is just a total bullshitter. And anyway, and now he wants to get rid of the whole tree and the tree that's next to it. And it's not only the trees that I planted, there are trees throughout the complex that are just disappearing. One gone, another one gone. And like I say, you can imagine someone whose own garden is plastic grass and paving. You can imagine, and he's in charge of the complex. You can kind of imagine he's probably someone who just doesn't like to be told, that tree needs trimming, that tree needs trimming. He'd rather just cut the whole tree down so he's got less work. But I'm just saying, I'm making a prediction now. While I'm away, he's going to come and saw down the trees so that he can do it, with complete liberty and just have his way, right? Let's see whether that happens. I'll tell you guys whether it does when I get back. And the crazy thing is, in summer, the paving here gets so hot, it's like too hot to even walk on. Meanwhile, some people seem to think, oh, I would just love as much paving as possible. Let's make this the oven. Let's allow the space to achieve the kind of oven-like potential that it has. And I mean, once a tree's gone, it's gone. You can't like plant it again and it's just going to be back. But that's people for you. That's some people love nature, and some people seem to hate nature. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to put that on the record, on this record. Okay, so he says, I tried to reconstruct the thing that it might have been, simplifying and accentuating the haughty, unchanging character of the pines and cedar clumps against the blue. It's interesting how he sees in the trees a kind of haughtiness, that the way the trees wind above the asylum, that the trees are kind of alive and doing their thing, but the people inside the asylum are sort of trapped and small, right? So the other day I parked under the shade of the tree, and I just put my hand on a bough, and I was just like trying to appreciate the tree while it's still there, because it's probably not going to be there when I see it again. Just trying to, and it was just like so nice, just the coolness under the tree, the day, the weather, everything. I was just like appreciating the moment, but also feeling like this is probably going to be gone, right? Anyway, he says, if it should be that they remember me, which is a matter of indifference to me, there will be something in color to send to the Vinctistas. But I'm indifferent to that. What I'm not indifferent to is that a man who is very much my superior, Munier, has painted the whatever of the Borinage. I wonder if we can find that. No. It's not that. So I can't find it. Anyway, he goes on to say, and the shift going to the pits and the factories, their red roofs and their black chimneys against a delicate grey sky, all things that I've dreamt of doing, feeling that it had not been done and ought to be painted. And still there's an infinity of subjects there for artists. Amazing how he is trying to, which I think is very difficult, he's trying to paint feelings, right? He's trying to paint in a way his emotions, scenes that he sees, and he's trying to, right? Anyway, he goes on to say there's an infinity of subjects there for artists, and one ought to go down into the mine and paint the light effects. If you have not yet sent off the canvas and the paints, I must tell you that at present I have absolutely no canvas. And I was going to ask you, in case you find it difficult to send the total of what I owe Monsieur Peyron at once, if it were possible to send me a money order for 15 francs or so I could go to all one of these days. So he really does want to go to all, right? I often think that Gauguin, now he writes about I could go to all, and then he thinks of Gauguin. I often think that Gauguin would have lost nothing by staying here, for I can see clearly in the letter he has written me that he is not altogether at the top of his form either. And I know quite well what that is due to. They are too hard up to get models and can't have been living as cheaply as they first expected. So it seems like Gauguin has been a bit of a spendthrift. However, if he has patience, next year may perhaps be splendid, but then he will not have Bernard with him if he's in the army. Don't you feel now that the figures by Jules Breton and Belay and others will remain? Those men overcame the difficulty of models, and that is a great deal. And a picture by Otto Weber of the good period, not of the English, will certainly hold its own too. One swallow doesn't make a summer. I actually once wrote a book using that title. And a new idea does not destroy finished and perfect work. That is the terrible thing about the Impressionists, that the development of the thing hangs fire, and for years they remain held up by obstacles which the previous generation triumphed over, the difficulty of money and models. And so Breton, Belay, and others might well make a joke of it and say in surprise, but look here, when shall we see these countrymen and women of yours? As for myself, I feel a disgrace and a failure. I've copied that woman with a child sitting by a hearth by Mademoiselle Dumont Breton, almost all in violet. Interesting. Guess he's thinking about Joe here, possibly. He says, I'm certainly going on copying. That will give me a collection of my own. And when this is large and complete enough, I shall give the whole to a school. I can also inform you that in the next package, you'll become better acquainted with the good Tartarin's Alpines than you are now. Apart from the canvas of the mountains, you have not seen them yet, except in the background of the canvases. I've a sterner study than the previous one of the mountains, a very wild ravine where a small stream winds its way along its bed of rocks. It is all violet. I would certainly do a whole series of these Alpines, for having seen them for a long time now, I'm more up to it. You remember that fine landscape by Monticelli, which we saw at Della Reberez, of a tree on some rocks against the sunset? There are many effects like that just now, only I can never be outside at the hour of sunset, but for that I should have tried one of them. Is Joe's health still good? I think that altogether this year's been happier for you than the previous ones. As for me, I'm feeling well just now. I think Monsieur Perron is right when he says, I am not strictly speaking mad. I think he's right as well. For my mind is absolutely normal in the intervals and even more so than before. But during the attacks, it is terrible. And then I lose consciousness of everything. But that spurs me to work and to seriousness, like a miner who's always in danger, makes haste in what he does. So you kind of get a sense that there's been like an added urgency, that Van Gogh has developed an added urgency. Then he says, Mother and our sister will be getting ready to move. I'm enclosing a few words for Isaacson, Bernard, and Gauguin. There's no hurry, of course, about sending it on to them. The first time they come to see you will do. In the evening, I'm bored to death. Good Lord, the prospect of winter isn't very cheery. I hope you have received the canvases I sent off about 10 days ago in good order. I'm going to make a long trip to the mountains to look for likely spots. Goodbye for now. Above all, send the paint and the canvas if it hasn't already been sent off, for I have no more canvas at all, nor zinc white. Many kind regards, Joe. To Joe. Ever yours, Vincent. Sorry, I had that at a reduced size. Sorry about that. Okay, and so that is it. We'll commence with Van Gogh letters probably about a week from now from Saint-Remy, so look out for that. Should be quite exciting. Shall we have a look at this article? Thanks again to who sent that on. What actually happened to Vincent van Gogh's ear? Here are 3 things you should know. And this is a 5-year-old article, but it is pretty worthwhile. Is Robbie Robbins still here? You might want to read that article. So I'll quickly go through some of it. It was either the lobe of the entire ear. It was either the lobe or the entire ear gone. Let me just increase the size. The severed ear, or maybe nub, was delivered to a woman, most likely a prostitute, but maybe not. Right? So how much of the ear did he lose? A little piece, a big piece? We're not sure. He gave the ear to a woman. Was it a prostitute? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of uncertainty surrounding it. When I started looking at Vincent van Gogh, nothing made sense, said Irish art historian Bernadette Murphy. So in other words, she's reading the history of the artist like I did. She's reviewing the history of the artist like I did. And she says there were inconsistencies repeated incessantly in every book. And in true crime, when we deal with inconsistencies, what do? We don't just go, don't know what that means. We try and figure it out. We try and solve the mystery. And that's what I try to do in The Murder of Vincent van Gogh. And some of it incorporated Bernadette Murphy's research. She was trying to unravel inconsistencies, but only up to a point. It says that odyssey led Murphy to the Bancroft Library. In 2010, with the help of Bancroft archivist David Kessler, Murphy made a historic discovery. She actually changed art history, one that settled decades of controversy about Van Gogh's ear. She spent the next 6 years researching and building up her argument, publishing the book Van Gogh's Ear in 2016. And that's her. So I'm not going to go through this because I think it's established. Certainly if you've read my book, you know that I dealt with this. How much of the ear was cut off? The entire ear. So I do think if you were thinking that let me ask the question this way. If you think Van Gogh cut off his own ear, is that more likely if it was a small part of the ear or the whole ear? Conversely, if you think someone else cut off his ear, For example, with a sword, is it more likely that he would cut off a piece of it or the whole ear? And I think that is quite a simple, solid argument in and of itself. It's also really amazing how they found the sketch of the original doctor. He is actually holding it. I don't know if you guys can see it. But this is the part I want to emphasize. The ear was given to a cleaner at a brothel, not a prostitute. And that almost suggests that Van Gogh had the hots for someone that he encountered there. So it says here, for a long time, the accepted story was that Van Gogh gifted the bloody appendage to a woman named Rachel, a prostitute. He gave the woman the ear outside the brothel, and according to a local newspaper report, told her to keep this object carefully, but she fainted on the spot. That's the original account. But Murphy's research showed the woman was not a prostitute, but a cleaner. Murphy scoured census records from all and found no prostitutes named Rachel. She also uncovered a news report that said the ear's recipient's name was Gabby, not Rachel. Murphy found a woman named Gabrielle, but she was only 18 years old at the time, 3 years too young to be a registered prostitute. Now, the interesting thing is, I suspect something may have happened between Van Gogh and Marguerite Gachet, who was only, I think, 19 or 20 years old at the time, and barely a little bit older than Gabrielle. So if that's true, there is a bit of a match to that. Anyway, Murphy tracked down Gabby's descendants, who told her that, in fact, Gabby had worked as a maid at the brothel. So really good research from Bernadette Murphy to pay back costly medical bills following a bite from a rabid dog. This is the part that's important. Gabby also worked at a cafe that Van Gogh visited regularly, suggesting there may have been a closer connection between the pair than was previously believed. And could this be the reason that he wants to go back to Arles? Because he's missing Gabby, he's missing this friend that he doesn't talk about, but is possibly, the woman that he gave his ear to. Because if you think about it, the one thing that there's no question about is that after he lost his ear, he gave it to a woman. What's that all about? Regardless of who cut his ear off, he ends up giving it to a woman. Could it be that him and Gauguin were arguing about the woman, or that this woman was in some way causing maybe even a rift between the two artists, or just that Van Gogh really liked her and she didn't like him, maybe? And it was like, well, this is how far I've been driven to by my feelings towards you. While on this topic, a few days ago, I was in my garden and I saw a sparrow dead on the ground, on the paving. It looks like its eyes had been gouged out. It looks like it had been attacked by another bird. But it was recently dead, and now it's the mystery of what happened to this bird. And I don't think it was a cat, because there's a dog. I have a dog, and the dog cats won't come into my garden. And then I remembered just this cacophony I'd heard earlier that same day from the weaver bird in my garden as well. This weaver bird's got constantly building nests, and I've actually seen it also taking food up to, the female taking food up to the little chicks that are in the nest. So it's quite a vulnerable time for this weaver bird's progeny. And I suddenly was just thinking about this whole idea of how dangerous a male can be when it comes to a female, in the sense of when a male feels like there's a perceived threat to a female that it is connected to, some males can really go overboard. And in this case, the Weaver bird did just that. The Weaver bird felt like, I've got to completely keep you away out of this space because I'm in charge, right? And one gets a similar sense with Chris Watts and Scott Peterson, that they were so caught up in their relationship with a woman that they wanted to, that they were prepared to kill, right? And one wonders, does that equation not apply to Vincent van Gogh as well? Not only with the ear incident, but also with regard to his actual death a year and a half after that. Just something to think about. Because I was frankly surprised that to find this dead bird on the garden path. But then I thought about the dynamic of the Weaver bird that's trying to prove what he's trying to prove at the time that he's trying to prove it. So just something to consider. So again, I don't think you can take the idea of a woman out of the ear incident, because after the ear incident, after he loses his ear, he gives his ear to a woman. So for him, for Vincent van Gogh, there's definitely relevance in some way to a particular woman. I mean, he would later go back to his bed and almost bleed to death, and yet it was so important for him to give her his ear. You know, it's pretty incredible. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing. This is pretty incredible as well. The petition to kick Van Gogh out of the Yellow House was a sham. Now, who says true crime and Van Gogh are not compatible? I remember when I used to do Van Gogh letters on the True Crime Rocket Science channel, pretty much after every episode, I'd lose about at least 20 subscribers. And I probably ultimately lost hundreds of subscribers just by doing many of the Van Gogh letters. Anyway, here's a good example of something that was dishonest in terms of Van Gogh. So 2 months after he lost his ear, Van Gogh's neighbors in Arles apparently launched a petition to have the erratic artist institutionalized and removed from the iconic Yellow House. Van Gogh believed that 80 people had signed the petition, but actually only 30 people had signed it. And again, this is thanks to Bernadette Murphy's research. In the beginning of her research, Murphy compiled a database of the 13,000 people living in Arles. Wow, you know, what excellent research, what detail, during Van Gogh's 14-month stay. By tracing the signatures and digging through that database, Murphy concluded that 24 of the 30 signatories were not even residents of Arles, but rather acquaintances of the house manager, in other words, friends of the house manager, who wanted to remove his strange tenant. So it's a little bit like, almost like politics, where you have fake voters, I guess, or something like that, or you have manipulation going on. So it seemed like there were 30 signatories when there were actually only 6 were genuine people, I guess, complaining. And so when Van Gogh is kicked out, I mean, think about that. Van Gogh is kicked out under false pretenses. Van Gogh is basically being gaslit that that things are a certain way. Can you imagine being kicked out of your own town and being led to believe 80 people can't stand the sight of you, or whatever it is? Meanwhile, it's actually one person who really doesn't want you there and has his own selfish agenda going on. And I feel like a lot of that's going on where I live, where there's someone going on, because when I find out something's happened and then I'm told this person complained, and I go to that person, they said, no, I didn't complain. And then that happens, then, oh no, that person complained, and they're just complaining constantly. And I go to them, ask them directly, and they said, no, I never said anything. I haven't actually spoken to that person for ages. And so you've literally got someone with an agenda that is pulling the wool over your eyes and basically just doing whatever he wants and what suits him, right? And the question is, what are you going to do about it? Another one is, do you know that it's happening? Like, there's all of this subtlety going on behind your back. Are you aware of it? And then the other thing is, well, now that you're aware of it, what you're going to do about it? Now, let's say Van Gogh was aware of it. What could he have done? Was he supposed to stay in the yellow house? What I'm saying is there's an agenda to get rid of him. Let's say he found out about the agenda. Should he now have stayed in the yellow house? He would have been justified to stay there. He would have been right to stay there. But do you stay somewhere where people are trying to do this to you, right? Anyway, she goes on to write, Murphy is now using the database to track down the identities of people painted by Van Gogh while in Arles, the greatest period of his artistic creation. Yeah. Anyway, so a really interesting research that she conducted. Okay, well, I think that's it from my side. I'm glad to have gotten through this in under 2 hours. I must say, I did one video where I think one letter took like 3.5 hours just to narrate that one letter. I mean, that was pretty exhausting. But I'm looking forward to Van Gogh Letters 82, where I'll be in situ. I'll try to share photos of Arles again, but obviously Arles in autumn, of where the Red Vineyard was. We'll try and go there. Of the asylum. I mean, I took very few photos on the other side because running out of time, the sun was setting. And yeah, even other things as well, a couple of hotel reviews, what we're eating, what we're seeing, but also especially the colors and the landscapes that we're seeing. And so look out for that. I'll be putting that on Instagram, obviously for free, and here as well. I'm not sure if I'll be doing some coverage of the whole Van Gogh thing for members only, but probably I will do some of it. Yeah, but I'll definitely do Van Gogh Letters, probably 82 and 83 from the south of France. So that'll be like in the next 2 weeks. And then on the Rocket Science channel, a lot of what I'll be looking at there will be members only. And what's the other thing? I'm about to publish a marathon analysis on the Madeleine McCann case, just dealing with something that I think needs to be dealt with in a very simple way. Is this true or not? And what are some of the other implications? And I think it's going to be quite worthwhile. So I do hope those of you who are here watching me now, I'll be publishing that video probably in the next 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Please watch to the end. I mean, I know you guys have got long attention spans, but it is quite long. It's about 31, 32 minutes. I think you'll get a very deep sense of what I'm trying to get at in terms of that particular case. So hopefully you'll watch it. Yvonne, thank you so much. Looking forward to your trip to France. Thanks for everything. Stephanie says, can't wait. Stephanie, I'm so glad you're going to be joining us on this trip. I do hope while I'm there and while I'm sharing things, you guys are going to get a sense of, I also want to do that. Let's do a Team Peachtree expedition together. Let's go and see Monet in Gauvigny and make a little outing for us. Maybe we can do that. And just maybe a group of us can come together and decide what will suit us. I think it'll be fun. Okay, so we'll think about it. When, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. You guys answer that question. Maybe this sort of time next year. Not necessarily so late. Maybe September. This sort of time next year, or maybe April next year. It's another possibility. April, May, probably a good time. Timmy, I am about to wrap up. Timmy, come. Timmy's looking at me with mournful eyes like, Okay. Come on. Poor Timmy is going to be not with me for a little while, so he's not going to be too happy. But he does have someone to walk him. So, Timmy, you must guard that tree. Okay. Don't let anyone cut the tree down while I'm away. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for being here. We just hit the 2 hour mark. Thanks very much to Robbie, Robin, Deborah, and Yvonne for your super chats. Really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday and enjoy what's left of it. And when I see you guys next time, it'll be pretty much where that is, just with different color and texture. So I look forward to it. I'm sure you guys do too. Take care, guys. See you guys next time. Bye.